Dustin Johnson versus Cameron Champ. Who has the most optimal swing for distance? What's up, guys? It's your favorite keeper coach. Let's go do this thing.
About 4 in the morning.
Alright guys, so if you guys are new to Mike's OG Academy, we do everything you guys need to know about golf instruction, whether it be golf course vlogs, golf instructional videos, again, anything you guys need to know about golf instruction, we do it here. So if you guys haven't already, hit that little red subscribe button and you guys are going to be notified every time we drop a video.
Turned pro at 23. Took 9 years to win a major. What changed?
So, Dustin Johnson versus Cameron Champ. Who has the most optimal swing for difference? This is going to be a jam-packed analysis with a bunch of information. Let's just go over some of the macro ideas I want you guys to take away from this. First little macro idea, we're going to talk about the differences in wrist conditions throughout the backswing. One of our subscribers wanted to know this, so we're going to leave his tag below. Thank you so much for everyone who comments on these videos, giving us some more new ideas to kind of think about. We're going to branch this video into the second topic, which will be talking about the differences between these two players, trail side knee, and the sequencing of when and how much they kick their trail knee into internal rotation. If you guys don't know what that is, just stay tuned. You guys are going to know all about internal rotation with that trail knee. You guys are going to just know everything you need to know. And the third part, the final part, is going to be, I think, the most interesting part of the video. So stay tuned and watch the whole video. But it's going to be about how these players hit a fade. Now, I watched a good amount of coaches out there are talking about now how the geometric center, or the sweet spot of the golf club, tends to shift when players try to hit a fade and they're swinging out to in. And they tend to see that good players hit a little bit more off the heel when they're trying to hit their fades. Now, based off the testing I've done personally, and as well as what I can see from these players, I'm actually finding that not to be the case. These players actually are hitting their fades, if anything, actually slightly off the toe, and we'll give you guys some proof behind that. And I think it's just going to be pretty interesting for you guys to figure out how they kind of hit their fades. So anyways, let's hop into the first part, which is the wrist conditions. So before we get too far into the rest of this video, I want you guys to take a look at our product, the video analysis. Now, it's going to be analyzing your golf swing, comparing it side by side by your favorite tour player, as well as kind of giving you 3 ideas to implement into your golf swing. We've had so many of you guys utilize this product to help you guys your first kind of initial steps towards their golfing macro goals. So again, I want you guys to go check it out. It's in the link in the description below, and enjoy the rest of this video. Alright guys, so hopping over to wrist conditions, a few terminologies you guys are going to have to understand from me. We're going to be talking about the 6 wrist conditions, right? So let's just go over them really briefly. So this one right here, I call this the flexing, right? When you're showing off at the gym, you know, you're trying to flex like that, you know, trying to show off. That is flexion in the lead wrist, right? This one right here, extension, right? That's when you're doing the push-ups, you know, trying to work out, get that nice little extension look. Extension, flexion, right? Those are the first 2. What are the second ones, right? Well, this one right here. This right here, or when you're about to go fishing, right? When you're pulling the fishing pole back, that's called radial hinge right there, right? Now the last one, well, not the last one, the fourth one is when you're letting go of that fishing pole, right? You're letting the line go, right? That's ulnar deviation when you're going like this, correct? Now the last ones are with the left wrist, for me as a right-handed person, or facing it basically, this is supinating right here, right? And this is pronating, right? So supinating and pronating. Those are the 6 ways that the wrist can move. That's basically what we're going to be talking about, okay? So hopefully you guys got that, and let's just go hop in. So first things first, Dustin Johnson, his trigger move has kind of a good amount of those wrist conditions all combined into one. As we can see, he has initially a little push forward, it looks like, and then he pushes away from the golf ball. As his hands move towards the target, clubhead starts picking up, and then he gets into his takeaway portion, right? What is a trigger move? Well, it's just an easy way to get your swing started. You want a little bit of motion. You want to be moving a little bit before you start the swing, just so you can kind of get into some type of rhythm. Now, breaking it down a little bit more in a biomechanical sense, what is he doing, right? Well, the first part, in terms of the wrist, we can see that the lead wrist is pushing forward this way, and it's also going like this. So there's a little bit of flexion, and there's a little bit of a pronating move in that lead wrist. Now, in the trail wrist, what we're going to see is that there's a little bit of an extension move as well as radial hinge, right? Typically, when you see players have wrist hinge this way, most of the time they're going to have to add on a little bit of extension in the trail wrist while they're doing that wrist hinge, right? That typically goes hand in hand. Now, from there, that is pretty much what he's doing with his wrist in the takeaway portion. Now, because he has a strong grip, DJ doesn't, even though he adds on all those kind of moves and he flexes it, he has that club face relatively shut than to most players, especially what traditional golf coaches want. They want the toe up towards the sky. He's definitely pretty shut compared to that. As he gets up to the top of the swing, we can probably start seeing him. He kind of doesn't increase the amount of radial hinge that he has. If anything, he's pronated a little bit more with that lead wrist. And then from the top of the swing, we're going to start seeing the transition move, which is basically, he's already in flexion at this point. He's already in extension this trail wrist, but you're going to see him increase that even more as he goes like this with his wrist, right? So he's doing this, and he's flexing more, and then right about here on the way down, then he starts to supinate that lead wrist down. And that's pretty much DJ's wrist conditions throughout the backswing and a little bit of the transition. If we take a look at Cameron Champ, he has a little bit of a different trigger. It's a lot more subtle, right? He has that same little move off the golf ball, and you can almost see the lead wrist going a little bit forward and pronating, similar to DJ's, but nowhere near as much. As he gets into the end of the takeaway, he's obviously, I think, got a little bit more of that classic takeaway look. He's got a little bit of extension in this trail wrist. He has a little bit of pronation, a little bit of radial hinge, but not excessive amounts, right? He's not doing crazy stuff with these wrists at that position. As we get him up to the top of the golf swing, major difference between him and DJ obviously is I think Cameron, if anything, is extended slightly in this lead wrist, right? So he's nowhere near here. If anything, he has a flat lead wrist that's slightly extended. But what they do very similar is the transition move to where they both flex that wrist down even more and then get this move, right? They go like this, and then they start supinating down, which gets the club face turning down towards the ground earlier, which means they don't have to have a lot of late second supination. And that's pretty much in a nutshell how these two players move their wrists throughout the backswing and transition. Obviously something I recommend for a lot of players to do. The amount you do it and when you do it is obviously relative to the individual. Typically speaking, if you're a slower swing speed player, we're not going to want you getting a lot of flexion because that usually closes the club face too much for you guys. Faster swinging players, it's okay to get away with a little bit more, right? But again, that's not 100% true. It's really relative to the individual. So let's shift gears now into the second part of this analysis. We're going to be talking about the trail side knee and how much it kicks internal. Now, for the first part of this downswing transition move, I would say the rate that the players kick their knee into internal rotation is relatively similar. I would argue that Cameron Champ's might be a little bit less. Really hard to tell from these angles. Again, there's going to be some commenters below that probably already commented that the angles are off. I agree. I know that Dustin Johnson's angle is slightly more to the left with the camera and a slightly higher than Cameron Champ's angle. So I still believe later on, closer to impact, you're going to be able to see that Dustin Johnson's knee has kicked in a little bit more internally. And we're going to kind of prove that by the way that his foot is moving, because I think the foot is a telltale sign of what the knee is doing, correct? So let's kind of go dive in. So when we take these players back down, and let's kind of zoom in a little bit right around here. When we take both these players down to lead arm parallel, let's just kind of focus in on this trail knee. Now, different to about like a Jamie Sladkowski or kind of the Sam Snead squat move, you don't see an exaggerated amount of external rotation in the trail knee, right? It's not going and really separating, right? They're not separating those two knees or abducting them. But what they are doing is there's maybe a smidge of that, but then they're also not kicking, both of these players aren't kicking rapidly into internal rotation relative to the rest of the people that I typically see out there on the tour. A lot of tour players kick that knee in way quicker than both these players do. Again, we're trying to just look at the differences between these two specific players and see the difference, right? So anyways, this is DJ up to about lead arm parallel. That's how much he's kicked his lead knee in. Now, for my personal liking, I think it's a little bit too much. And for my personal liking too, I think that even Champ has kicked it in maybe a little bit too much for my liking. But at this position, you really can't argue. They're pretty similar in terms of how much it's kicked in. I would say Cameron Champ has kicked in less, but I'm not even going to try to debate that because you guys are going to go wild in the comment section. One thing you can kind of see, though, for sure, I would say that DJ possibly has externally rotated that lead knee more than Champ. Also, it's a little bit more in flexion than Champ is at this point from what it appears to see. I don't know that to be 100% correct, but I definitely would guarantee if we got into gears, I think Cameron Champ's lead knee might be extending a little bit earlier than DJ's, maybe a touch. But I still would argue that Champ's lead knee or trail side knee is not kicked so far internally. Now from here, this is where I'm going to get my claim. And I want you guys to look really closely. And we're going to bring him down to about position 6, which is right about here. Okay, and let's go take a look at Cameron, which is roughly right around here. And this is where I'm going to make my claim. So at this position, I think visually you guys are just going to be able to see this as well. I think it's pretty obvious that DJ's knee is kicked in more and collapsed more than Cameron's has at this point. And just to kind of give you guys some more proof, if we go zoom in on his trail foot, if we look at the way his trail foot has looked, look how his heel is sprawled out in this fashion, as opposed to Champ's is more so in this fashion, right? So whenever your foot is a little bit more in Dustin Johnson's fashion, all that really means is that his knee has had to kick in more than Champ's at this point. Champ's is more as rolled and lifted the heel. DJ has almost, if anything, gone like this with the heel, correct? And that would make his knee kick a little bit more internal, right? Or it's more so a reaction of the knee doing that, is more so what I should have said. But anyways, you guys kind of get the point. You guys get it, right? You guys get it. Of course, the haters won't get in. They're going to go complain. But anyways, I think at this point, it's pretty obvious to see that DJ has kicked it a little bit more internally. Now, what does that cause? I think it causes DJ to have a little mini stall relative to a Cameron Champ. I also think it has him adding on maybe a little bit more right bend through the impact zone than Cameron Champ, as well as raise the handle of the golf club a little bit more than Cameron Champ. Now, from this positions, let's just get him into impact real quick. And we're actually going to, we're going to see that DJ's handle is higher. So the handle of the club is higher than Champ's. Now let's just go look at club head speed, right? So DJ's roughly right around 123 average last year. Cameron Champ's roughly right around 129 average last year, right? So Cameron's right around 6 to 7 mile per hour faster than him. And obviously he's a lot longer, because I think DJ in the year 2018 was right around 317, 318. And I believe Cameron Champ was right around 325. So why is Cameron Champ longer? He's not as tall as DJ, and he doesn't weigh as much as DJ. And I would argue that on terms of athleticism skill, these two players are pretty similar in terms of the amount of athleticism that they have. So why is Cameron Champ swinging faster? Just a little bit. And I think it's really has to do with the way they're using the ground / using the way their knees work, right? The knee structure through this crucial zone of roughly right around lead arm parallel through the ball to about position 8. I think that DJ has a little mini stall here, but he does have a really nice drive and hold release pattern, which is probably for another video, but you guys have probably heard me say that. That's why I think he still hits it relatively accurate. But I think he has a little mini stall, and he raises the handle a little bit more than Cameron. That loses him some speed. I think that Cameron has a little bit less of a stall, and he's rotating through here, which gets him basically whipping the club through, I think, a little bit faster than DJ does, because his handle's not so high, and then he can basically kind of go through the shot. So without just telling you guys that, let's go kind of look at some different camera angles so you guys can see what I mean. And then we'll hop into the last part with those camera angles and show you guys how their strike, how they hit their cuts. And I think you guys will like that too. So stay tuned. All right, guys, we're going to get into the last part of this section 2 of this video analysis. We're going to go look at the handle deliveries of these two players. So let's get into that talk. So we're going to stop DJ right around impact, and then we're going to stop Cameron right around impact as well. So just based off the visual between these two players, which player, I want to hear your comments below. I want you guys to start a little debate. Which player do you think has the handle that is more so flatter than the other one, right? Who has the flatter vertical swing plane? Is it DJ or is it Cameron Champ? You guys are probably going to know my opinion. I think it's Cameron Champ, right? And if we go just draw a few angles, now I'm not saying these angles. Perfect. So like 49 degrees, let's call it around, would be kind of roughly his vertical swing plane with the driver. If we go take a look at DJ, I would definitely argue that his vertical swing plane is more so on the steeper side. And we're going to see that DJ's is more so kind of right around like 56 to even kind of 55 is actually, I think, where it really is. Actually 54. Roughly right around there. So what does that really mean? Now again, like I said, guys, don't freak out. If we went on TrackMan and got the vertical swing planes, I don't think these would be super exact. I think they would be within 3 to 2 degrees. I would argue. I think that Cameron Champs is getting his handle much more closer to where the original lie angle is. So if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, if you kind of see, when I see the ultra premier ball strikers that were just known for their ball striking, you tend to see that wherever they set up with the lie angle of their club shaft tends to match on the way down. It might be a little bit higher with irons by a couple degrees, but not by much. They're not raising the handle a lot, and they're definitely not lowering the handle a lot. They're actually kind of just replacing it. Now, there was a famous instructor, Jim McLean, that said everything at impact is different. I would argue that. I would say everything in terms of the body and wrist conditions and just everything else is different, but I would argue that the best players, that the lie angle of the club is actually really, really close. And if you want to be ultra specific, maybe it is different because it is different by 1 to 2 degrees. But I think a lot of people just are under this conception that it's okay to raise the handle a lot because they get clubs that are 4 degrees upright. And the fitter's like, yeah, we just got to get your clubs more upright and it's going to fit you perfectly. I mean, that might help you in terms of contact because now your lie angle's more flush and it's basically allowing you to do this motion, but I think it's going to lose you club head speed and still lose you face control when you raise the handle that much. And just look at all the players who have high handles and look at their stats relative to players who have a little bit more on the lower end. And even though we're bashing on DJ a little bit right now currently, his vertical swing plane, I would argue that the lie angle of his club coming in, or his vertical swing plane, or is he heel up or toe down, toe up. Sorry guys, I'm a little tired here. Whether it be toe up or toe down, which would be a GC2 quad term, all I'm trying to say relative to the other masses of the PGA Tour players out there, he has a better vertical swing plane or lie angle, whatever, or toe up or toe down numbers that you want, whatever you want to call it. I would argue that his are better than most tour players, but relative to what Cameron Champ's doing here, and also some of the longer hitters I see as well, like a Jamie Sulkowski or maybe the Ben Hogans, when you measure kind of those players, just really good ball strikers, you tend to see that the handle is matching more so to where it was at the address position than raising a lot. And I would say just off the eye that DJ is raising his a little bit more than Cameron Champ. All right, guys, so that was a little bit of a long spiel. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Now, the last part of this analysis, I think, like I said, the most interesting part is how these players hit their fades. Now, there's a very famous golf instructor that was talking about how whenever players tend to get a little bit more of an out-to-in pattern with their club head, if they're a right-handed golfer, for the cuts, they tend to see the geometric center shift to more so towards the heel, and you start seeing strike patterns a little bit more towards the heel. So i.e. what they mean is when the player tries to hit a cut and they hit it what they feel like is solid, the strike is actually more towards the heel. So they did this whole kind of test. It makes a lot of sense to me. I've seen that to be this case for good players, but I've also seen a certain model good player that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. And I think these two players kind of fall under that category. The players who bomb it and hit cuts that bomb it are the players who are doing more so this model where they're actually kind of using the toe and kind of using the toe strike with the gear effect to lessen the fade a little bit, as well as take off some of the spin of the fade. And I think it's super interesting how they do it, and I wanted to kind of discuss it in this analysis. So let's stop DJ at impact, right? Hopefully you guys would all agree that he's going to hit this slightly off the toe, right? And we know that DJ hits a fade. In this shot, I know he was hitting a fade as well because that's what it said. He is hitting a fade. Let's see. That strike is very much off the toe. So what is he basically doing, right? So I think what these players are doing, they're getting their, obviously, not necessarily their swing direction doesn't necessarily have to be left, but they're not getting their swing direction as far to the right as a drawer. They're also not going to have their paths, obviously their paths are negative, but I think what they're doing is they're counteracting, they're figuring out a way with strike, either on a subconscious level or their coach is telling them to do this. They're finding out a way to strike to take off spin, right? So whenever you hit it more so towards the toe, you're typically going to spin it less, right? Also what it does is it does this whole gear effect thing. If you hit it off the toe and you're cutting across it and your face is closed, let's say you're swinging -2, -3, which is roughly around where these players probably swing, and let's say their face is at like -2, -1, what this could possibly do is because they hit a toe strike, the gear effect, what it does is it takes off some of that cut spin, which means it cuts a little bit less and it also takes off some of the backspin. So they end up hitting kind of like 5 to 10 yard cuts to maybe even like little tiny butter cuts that are super low spin. And because their strike pattern is still maybe a little bit towards high-ish to middle-ish to high-ish toe, they're still kind of launching it relatively high, which I don't think Cameron's subtly different than what DJ's doing to hit his cut, which we'll get to here in a sec because he hits a low cut. It's a little bit different story, but they're
both using, I think, the toe with the gear effect, that toe strike to a driver to lessen the amount of cut spin that they're tilting to the axis is what they're lessening that axis tilt. So I guess if we're getting a little crazy here with the numbers, and they're basically...
And I think it's super interesting. Obviously, this is just a theory that I have. I've seen it happen when I used to test with TrackMan. The way I hit a cut was actually super similar to them. I never hit a cut with strike pattern towards the heel. Now, it was a little bit harder to tell back then because TrackMan only had smash factor. And the way I was telling where my strike pattern was through spray, which is accurate, but obviously not as accurate as the GC2 quad, and you can see strike within millimeters. I watched 10 different videos of DJ hitting his driver, and all of those videos, especially this one wasn't slow-mo, but especially the slow-mo ones, you could see the face coming into the golf ball, hitting it slightly off the toe going this way, right? Because you know he hit it off the toe because the face went like this subtle. So I think that's interesting. You guys can debate that if you want down in the comment section. I think that's definitely the case. Cameron's doing a similar thing too. If you guys watch his swing right here, you can obviously see that he's coming in and striking this one subtly off the toe, I would argue. And that's how he's hitting his cuts. I think that's taking off some spin for both these players. But anyways, guys, hopefully you found those points to be insightful. If you guys want to debate it, definitely go in the comment section. Tell me what you think. I'd be really interested. I do think it's a common thread. The leg work and just the pelvis work is super, super crucial, I think, for players to be able to, first, stay injury-free, right? Having those better models, as well as, I think, in terms of power and speed, the players who don't kick the knees so quick into internal rotation, who also keep the pelvis leveler through sections and keep their anterior pelvic tilt a little bit longer than other players, I think those are the players that generate more speed and as well as have stabler rated closures through impact because they're not jumping early and having to rely on the flip. So anyways, guys, hopefully we got that point home today. But anyways, go ahead, like this video, leave me a comment, let me know how we're doing. If you guys have some friends that you think would like this video, make sure to give it a share. And as always, hit that little red subscribe button. All right, guys, best of luck and play some golf out there.
Got a trunk full of bags.